You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello everybody, and welcome to the second edition of Dan's World. Hopefully this is going to go a lot smoother than the first edition of Dan's World. I did some testing, I tried changing my setup here, combining different stuff. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on your comments to make sure that I'm coming through, that I sound okay, that I look okay this time. I think that we're going to be able to work around a lot of the big problems that we had last time. As always, I will be talking about some movie news and also some TV news because we got our first look at some of the Harry Potter, first pictures from the new Harry Potter series, which, you know, they're first picks, but I have some ideas about that. There was a teaser trailer for Stranger Things that came out today, which is always exciting. And also, I don't want to bury the lead here. Just coincidentally, I did not plan for this to happen on the first day or on a day that I was doing this live stream, but I've hit 200,000 subscribers literally today, which is super exciting. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. I mean, there's not much to talk about. I guess the real thing I have to say is thank you as people that watch this channel and have watched this channel for so many years now, over 5 years now, to hit 200,000 subscribers. You know, I consider it to be a milestone. I did it a lot slower than a lot of people have because, you know, and I've said this on the channel before, I don't do things that maybe to my own detriment, that maybe encourage channel growth, but I run the channel the way that I want to, and the fact that I've been able to build up to 200,000 subscribers is really awesome, and I have only you to thank for that. And so I was considering when to do this on the show, but let's just get it out of the way up top. If you remember way back in, what was it, 2020, when I launched this channel, I said that when I hit 100,000 subscribers, that I would share a video that I found of me doing entertainment reports back when I was in high school. And I actually, I didn't find the tape really until about, well, I mean, I had it, but I didn't find a way to transcribe that tape or to get it digitized until very recently. And I did get it digitized. So I'm not going to show you the whole thing because I think I actually want to put together a group of people to see these reports. It's really quite something, but I feel like because I promised that I would show you it when I got 100,000 subscribers and I'm now at 200,000 subscribers, to celebrate, I should at least show you some of it. And this goes against my better instincts because this is very, I find this very embarrassing. But I'm going to show you about a minute of this footage that I found, and the the audio I had to work on syncing. That's why it's not more than a minute, but I have a minute to show you. This video is from my high school TV station. This would have been, if you see the movies I'm talking about, this would have been dated back to the fall of the year 2000. So we're talking, this is hard for me to believe, we're talking almost 25 years ago. And I'm just going to show it to you because I'm literally like my heart is beating out of my chest right now because, you know, listen, it is what it is. Actually, I think when you watch this, you'll see that even though this was 25 years ago, there's some things that really haven't changed about what I do. So here is about a minute of me to celebrate 200,000 subscribers, and there's much more to come. Like I said, I want to get a little bit of a party together to show the rest of these videos. But here's a minute of me reporting on the movie scene in the fall of the year 2000.
Thanks, guys. Well, the summer movie season has come and gone, and as with any year, it was an exciting one. Of the movies released from May through August, 11 of them topped the $100 million mark. One movie stands head and shoulders above the rest, though. The early summer release Mission Impossible 2 outgrossed the rest of the summer films, earning over $215 million. Well, tonight the Wildcats have their season opener against Camden, but if that's a little too far away, there are several other ways to have fun this weekend. If you're looking to go to the movies, there's a new one being released today called Highlander Endgame. Now, this is the latest installment in the successful series of Highlander movies. Now, if you're not familiar with the movies, you may be familiar with the TV show, which was spun off from the series. If you're looking for something a little different, you can also see the recent release, The Cell. This movie stars Jennifer Lopez as a psychiatrist who has to go into the mind of a serial killer to find out where his next victim is hidden. It also features Vince Vaughn and Vincent D'Onofrio.
Oh boy. Okay. So I should note, I don't believe that suit and tie was mine. I think that was like a studio suit and tie. And I don't know. There's another clip where I'm wearing like the most 2000s outfit ever, which is like me in a red shirt and a Dr. Evil tie. But literally, I think that it was hanging up on the rack in the in the studio. Because this was the early 2000s, and if you're going to be an anchor, you're going to wear a suit and tie. Yes, my Southern accent was very apparent. When I went to college, I kind of made a conscious effort to lose that a little bit because people thought I was dumb, which is not fair, but that's just the reality of it. And then living in California for 15 years really kind of cemented that. But yeah, I was shocked when I saw that video because I thought that as I remembered having a Southern accent. But I was like, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, no, it was a pretty pronounced Southern accent. So that like I said, that's 1 minute. I think probably total I've got about 30-ish minutes of it. And so there's some buddies that I would like to recruit to show all of that footage to for the first time, because I think that I think they get a kick out of it. And honestly, it's really just there to kind of make fun of me and roast me. It's 25 years ago, you know. It is fun to watch, but there are definitely things about that I'd forgotten, particularly the big studio suit and the Southern accent. So yeah. So there you go. That's a partial payoff on my 100,000 subscriber promise. I felt like I should probably deliver on that eventually. I see that we've already gotten some super chats coming in. I appreciate that. I'm going to grab those in just a second and answer your questions. And thank you to everybody that's already sent in a super chat. If you want to send one in, I will take a look at that and answer some of those questions that you have. I'll also try to keep an eye on the comments. I changed my setup a little bit so that I'm able to look at the stream directly into camera, so I don't have to keep going over like this. But let's talk about before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about these pictures that came out. And listen, I've always said, I don't really think it's that big of a deal when, you know, we see the first pictures from, you know, a movie or the first pictures from a show, because they're not the images that you're going to see in the actual show or in the actual movie. And set pictures especially, I don't usually cover because those aren't really even intended to be seen by anybody, including the studio. But Warner Brothers has officially released through their different channels some first look pictures at a couple of the characters from the new Harry Potter series, which is entering production. And this is going to be, if you don't know about it, it's basically a HBO/HBO Max adaptation of all of the Harry Potter books starting at the beginning, and with a new cast. And they're going to tell all of the stories, but in an episodic form. So, you know, the promise I think there is that they're going to be able to go a lot deeper into the adaptations of the books. And so we got to look, first of all, at Harry Potter. You know, again, that this is very candid. This is, you know, behind the scenes look at Harry Potter. And when I saw that pic, it came out, I think a few days ago or so. I looked at that and I was like, yep, that looks like Harry Potter. You know, it's a kid with brown hair and glasses, and he's wearing the Hogwarts stuff. And then we also got our first look at Nick Frost as Hagrid. And this one is, again, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that looks like Nick Frost with a beard. You know, I think it's way too early to start jumping to conclusions based just on these pictures about the show or what the quality of the show will be. Generally, I would say, you know, even though we'll see if this is the final styling, if this is the final costumes, etc. Generally, though, I will say, looking at those pictures, that it feeds a little bit into one of the things that I was kind of curious about, which is just how different is this going to be from what we've seen? Is this going to be a totally different view of the universe? Are they going to be kind of spinning it their own way, or is it going to be a little bit closer to what we've already seen in the movies and in the, the stuff that came out? I mean, really, it's been almost 25 years ago since the first Harry Potter movie came out. And this does make me a little concerned that they are hewing a little too close to the movies, at least as far as the look of the characters, etc. And again, this is just first impression. Nobody knows exactly what it's going to look like, but it does kind of raise those hairs on the back of my neck to say, I really hope that they aren't just dressing all the characters the same way, because like, well, if we change too much, people aren't going to like it, because then I feel it runs the risk of feeling like a cosplay version of the Harry Potter movies that we already know. And, even the Harry Potter school uniform, I think it's not exactly what we saw in the movies, but it's very close. I get the fact that they're based on the books and there's only so many ways you can go. Hagrid, for me especially, was like that looks kind of like Nick Frost dressing up as the Hagrid from the movie. So that's really my only takeaway from these first look pictures, is a little bit of concern that they are going to stay a little too close to the aesthetic, and that they're not going to make enough of a departure, but it's way too soon to make those kinds of judgments. But I will say, I didn't really have a whole lot of thoughts on the series, pro or con, going in. I'm a little bit more, I'm not even going to say worried, but I'm going to be watching with interest, because, and when people, I think somebody asked me about this on last week's show, my main concern with this is that it's not going to be enough of its own thing to justify, well, why are you remaking all of these stories so soon? And, I think that feeds into it just a little bit, the way that some of this looks. But again, it's so early. And, I think you just can't jump to conclusions here. So, those are my first thoughts on seeing it. Before I move on, let's look at some of your questions. And there are some people that have already asked some very cool questions. Let's see. Robert says, within the Schmodown, what did the managers actually do? And how did you actually study other than watching movies? That's a great question. Every manager had their own style. And if you're not familiar with the Schmodown, it was a movie trivia contest that I did for several years. And towards the last couple years, people were organized into teams, which were called factions. And every faction had a manager who generally did not compete, but was kind of a personnel manager for everybody. And they played a role on camera. They were kind of the hype man. They were the person that was in charge of, doing the strategy, etc. Every manager had their own style, but I will say that, I had a couple different managers. I had Kaiser, and I also had Finstock, I guess, or whatever you want to call him, Gucci, Tom Dagnino. He went by many names. And a lot of people didn't think the managers did anything. Actually, they did. Kaiser, especially, when I was on his team, would spend so much time jumping on, writing questions for us to help us study, checking in with us to see how we were doing. And then with Bobby Gucci, that was much more about, like, he was great at check-ins and moral support and checking, and what do you want to do? It wasn't just a figurehead type thing. But I would say that generally in the Schmodown, I think every single manager was very much on top of their teams, checking in with them, helping them study, getting them the resources they need, finding people to help study with them. And how did I actually study other than watching movies? Watching movies was my favorite way of studying, and I would often do that. I'd pick a category or something. That's how I watched every Tyler Perry movie, because I was like, all right, I'm going to study for the Tyler Perry slice. And let me tell you, watching every Tyler Perry movie condensed in the space of about 2 weeks, that's quite an experience. But there were times where I would look at an actor or something, and I'd go on IMDb and check their credits and stuff. That's another way that could be done. Yeah, anyway. It was fun. I had a great time with the Schmodown. It was a huge time commitment, but it was a lot of fun. This looks like this came from Real Rejects. At least that's what the name's cut off, but it says Real Rejects. Thank you so much. First of all, incredibly generous super chat. Congrats on 200,000, Dan. You're seriously the best critic on this platform and beyond it, honestly. Did you see the MK2 teaser? Honestly, not sure what your hopes are for it. Would love for you to share. I'm guessing that's Mortal Kombat 2. I did not see the teaser for that yet. I hope that's what you're talking about. I've been kind of prepping the show today. I don't know if it came out today. I enjoyed the first one that came out. I was not a big player. I didn't play that game a whole lot growing up. It was too bloody, so I wasn't allowed to. So I don't really have a whole lot of sentimental hope and attachment to that particular game. But I enjoyed the first movie, and I would say my hope is that it goes even further into the craziness than we saw in the first film. Like, just go nuts. I think that's what fans really want. Just go wild. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of hope or expectation to that, but I also have not checked that out. But thank you so much, by the way. I always love talking to my fellow YouTubers, and I did a great interview with Greg earlier this year. It was like an hour and a half or 2 hours long, and it was so much fun. I mean, I've known Greg from, the movie fights days, and before I had a channel, when he and John were first starting their channel. So it feels like, they're sort of the veterans in the YouTube space that I know more than most. So it's always, it is a little community. People don't believe that, but it is a little community. This is a super chat from, I got to figure out the names are cut off here. I might have to drag this window over here so that I can actually see the names, because I want to give you your credit. Let's see. Yeah, so that was Real Rejects, so thank you very much for that. This is from Sakaki, who says, "Hi Dan, happy 200,000 subs. I wanted to know if you would ever consider doing another flashback episode of Charts with Dan like you did a while back. I enjoyed the one you did about the year 1999 and the Phantom Menace." I enjoyed it too. I mean, that was really much more a function of the pandemic and just not knowing what to do, because there was no box office to speak of, and I had no content for my show. And I don't mean content in the YouTube sense. I mean actual content for my show. I don't know if I would do another whole flashback episode, because there's an interesting box office story nearly every week, but it could maybe be a segment or something like that, because it was fun. A lot of people didn't get it, but it sure was a whole lot of fun. Reynard City Update says, Wellish Jig from Norwich, England. Thank you. I hope it said, oh, sorry. Well wish jig from Norwich. See, here's the thing. You gave me a word with the W and a word without the W back to back. So I said wellish jig from Norwich, England. It's well wish jig from Norwich, England. The English language is so much fun, isn't it? Black Bag says, Dan, I'm still curious if you can adopt me. I don't know. I'm not really looking to adopt at the moment. But it's always a possibility, I suppose. Jacob Ball says, if you had to reboot Jaws, if I had to reboot Jaws, who's your director or cast? I mean, to me, that's like asking, hey, listen, if you had to replace your family, who would you want to be your mom, and who would you want to be your dad, and who would you recast as your brothers and aunts and uncles, etc.? It's so close to me that it's hard for me to say, like, oh, I could definitely see it if this person was in charge and if this person was playing the lead role, because like it just feels impossible for me to do that. So I don't want to really sidestep the question there, but it's like, it's just so inconceivable. If you gave me maybe like 45 minutes, I could sit down and figure that question out. But like, it's just, I can't conceive of it. It's like, set in stone for me. Joey says, congrats on 200,000. Fun fact, Superman is now the fourth Warner release this year with lead actors in dual roles after Sinners, Mickey 17, and Alto Nights. You know what? I actually, every year when I'm getting ready for my end of the year awards, at the end of the year, I do something kind of like what we did at Screen Junkies with the Screenies, where I will give out different awards for, just funny things that happen during the movies every year. And I started a note. I keep notes throughout the year for ideas for awards. And even before Sinners and before Superman came out, I started a note of like strangest trend. And I had already written down Warner Brothers movies where the lead actor plays two different roles. And now we've had like additional things added to that. It's very odd that we've had now 4 movies. It'd be weird if it was 4 movies in the same year. We've had 4 movies from the same studio in the same year that have had like multiple actors playing multiple roles. One of my favorite names here, they have commented here before, Ann Porkins says, do you like pineapple on pizza? For me, it's like musicals. I love music, I love movies, but I don't like them together. Thanks, and many hamburgers to you. I think I've been asked this question before, and I've said that this is a controversy that I'm very loath to wade into. I will say I don't mind pineapple on pizza. I don't think it's absolutely disgusting like a lot of other people do. But would I ever order of my own volition a pizza with pineapple on it? No, I would not. I think if you can get pineapple on pizza with like a good bacon in the UK or Canadian bacon here in the US, I mean, if you can pair it with a good topping, I don't think it's absolute sacrilege, but it wouldn't be my first choice. Fluffy Pro says, have you seen a movie in Screen X? Do you think it adds to the experience or is it a distraction? Do you think it can impact the box office like how IMAX can when one takes all IMAX shows? Screen X is interesting to me. I've not seen a movie in Screen X. I have seen some footage from inside Screen X theaters and what it looks like. For me, I think it would be a distraction because the it's not sort of like when they used to have before IMAX screens, they had OmniMax screens, kind of like the Sphere in Las Vegas, where you had a screen that curved all the way around you, but it was a dome, so it was like a curved TV. The footage I've seen from ScreenX theaters to me looks like it's like more like a rectangle, so it kind of bends out, but you can see the seams. I think for me that just seems distracting. Maybe I'll see a movie sometime in ScreenX and disagree, but yeah, I don't know. Will it ever get as big as IMAX? I don't think so. I think it's a little bit too specialty in not only audience interest, but in the facilities that you need. But I think right now studios can make some premium ticket sales off of a format that people enjoy. If it's worth doing it in the theater, then sure. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the format for me. Harvs K says, really enjoyed your ranked series of videos, especially the Godzilla one. Any plans for new ones down the pipe? My suggestions would be Muppets. My suggestions would be Muppets, Studio Ghibli, and classic Universal monster films. Yes, there are plans for ones coming down the pipeline. I have one that I have finished watching everything. I have written the script, which is pretty much the hardest part after getting the rankings down and stuff. And I have I really just need to record it, and then I'm thinking of kind of banking it for one specific moment that seems like it'll come fairly soon. But I can also tell you right now that I am currently working on another one that is tied closely to a movie that may or may not have just come out. So yeah, I've got one watched, written, and ready to record. I've got one that I'm doing the watch for right now. And Studio Ghibli has actually been on my list for a long time. I think it'll probably be the next one or two that I do. I don't have time to do a lot because I have to watch a lot of movies and I really want to put time and effort into it. But that Godzilla video was so much fun to do, and I'm glad that people enjoyed it. Ben Zayton says, congratulations on 200,000. It's all thanks to your dedicated work. Thank you very much. May I ask whether or not you ventured into New Zealand and Australia Taskmaster already? I've not. I've gotten all the way through UK Taskmaster. I've not gotten into New Zealand and Australia yet. As I said, I've kind of jumped into some other projects, and I dedicated quite a bit of time to Taskmaster, so I'm putting my focus elsewhere. But I've heard some pretty good things about those two. That they're different from the UK, but that they're funny. Julia says, thoughts on the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Great. Total world defining at that time. I was in college, my first year of college, then my junior year of college, or maybe even senior year. World defining movies. I mean, not much more to say about it. They were incredible, and I think that they still hold up. Micah says, been a huge fan of yours since Movie Fights. You've always have a well-reasoned and thought-out opinion. Thoughts on Dunkirk and 10-year anniversary re-release? One of my favorite IMAX experiences ever. And The Odyssey. Yeah, I mean, I think that there is probably enough of a fan base for Dunkirk to do probably maybe a more limited re-release, 70 millimeter re-release. They did that with Interstellar and it sold really well. I don't necessarily know if they would do a big nationwide re-release of Dunkirk, but I think that Nolan has enough fans, and that movie is a very impressive technical movie. I know I had my issues with how it chose to tell the story, but Dunkirk is incredibly well made. So I would not be surprised if, somebody cooked up doing 70 millimeter roadshow re-release, maybe limited IMAX re-release of Dunkirk. The Odyssey looks, I mean, well, I didn't get I know that for some people that went to see Superman, there was an Odyssey trailer attached. There was nothing attached when I went to see it. I don't know if they just didn't put it on at my local theater. I was there on opening day for the opening Thursday for Superman. So yeah, I don't know if we didn't get it, but I didn't see the Odyssey trailer, but I'm excited. We read the Odyssey when I was in high school. I think it'd be a great match for Christopher Nolan. Alex Fraser says, Dan, Jaws and IMAX, end of summer. Are you going? Probably. I did just see it a few years ago in IMAX, but also I don't think that I would probably ever turn down the chance to see Jaws on the big screen. Ivan Polanco says, hi, Dan. You talked about The Cell in your flashback video. Have you seen The Fall from the same director? Congrats on the 200,000. I have not. I've heard good things about The Fall, but I haven't seen it. Ann Porkins says, the cruel WB execs force you to recast your family as pizza. What pizzas are your parents, siblings, etc.? Well, that's pretty easy. I don't have siblings. I've never considered my mom in terms of pizza and what pizza she might be. Probably pepperoni. She's pretty awesome. So yeah, my mom's a pepperoni pizza. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Black Bag says, friends from work, new episode when? Good question. If you don't know Friends from Work, I've done 2 episodes in like 3 years. It's me, Joe Starr, and Spencer Gilbert just hanging out and talking. And we knew that it was going to be very kind of sporadic, but we haven't done one, I don't think, since 2023. And that's all on me. I've just kind of had a weird couple years. So they have both reached out and said they'd like to do it. And it's really more on me for not following up. But I've been just kind of randomly rewatching stuff as I'm, messing around the house, or if I'm at the gym or something. I've been rewatching random stuff on YouTube, and one of the old Honest Trailer commentaries that Joe Spencer and I did got recommended to me, and I hadn't seen it in years, and I watched it, and it just was really fun to kind of relive those days of going to work every day and having fun with them. So I owe them both a text to see when we can do another one, because I miss those guys, and I'm kind of just emerging from a bit of a, I don't know what you'd call it, but I'm kind of walking back out into the light a little bit, and I need to give them a call, because I would like to do another one. So the answer, Black Bag, is hopefully soon. Kareen says, Superman numbers are updated to 313 worldwide. I feel like the numbers were undercounted purposely. No, I mean, I don't think so. I was looking, I mean, it's 313 worldwide probably today, because it was that 200 million or whatever, 217, 220 number that was the opening weekend. And we've now had 1, 2, 3 full days of accounting after that. So, the worldwide numbers are going to go up. But I mean, I don't know what motivation anybody would have to undercount those numbers. And, the studio doesn't count that. I mean, there are third-party services, etc. So I don't really see where anybody would undercount it. Yeah, the numbers are going to update daily because it's making money, continuing to make money in the global market. But I don't know. I don't think anybody undercounted the numbers. Green Paper says, thoughts on Master and Commander. Do you recommend it? Thank you. I do recommend it. Master and Commander is one of those movies, came out in 2003, I think. I think it's like a fantastic movie, and not a lot of people talk about it. It's never really mentioned among its contemporaries, but I think it's great. It was going to be, I think, the first in a series of movies starring Russell Crowe, based on a series of books, old time ship captain movie. And it's so good. I think maybe because it was kind of at the same time as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and a lot of the other events or event movies that were coming out at that time. And it didn't do great at the box office, which is why I don't think they made any more. Nobody really talks about Master and Commander, but if you haven't seen Master and Commander, do yourself a favor and watch it, because I think that is one of those underrated, I think you could even call it classic films of the early 2000s that's just kind of been lost to time. So yes, Green Paper, I would absolutely recommend Master and Commander. Couple questions from Mad Sinister. How many cars have you gone through? Screenings. I got a a new car last year, which was only the third car I think I've ever owned. I had one car for a couple years when I turned 16, and then I think that was my third. This one I just bought last year was my third car. Um, so I don't go through cars pretty quick rapidly. I am racking up miles on this new car, but I'm also good about keeping up with maintenance and making sure that it's serviced and everything. So I generally will keep my cars for 10 years or more because, why buy a new car when you don't need to? And the only reason I bought a new car is because I needed one. It's a little bit snowier up here, and I knew I was going to be driving a lot. And I wanted something with all-wheel drive that could handle the weather that I might have to go through. And I've already, between snow and rain, it's already come in handy. Mad Sinister, take this for gas money. Don't tell Harloff. It's between you and me. Ann Porkins says, the cruel WB execs force you to recast your mom as pizzas, and they say no pepperoni, or else they'll get super mad and let Disney buy them. Man, Ann Porkins, you're painting me into a corner here. So recast, some days you wake up and you just never know where the day is going to take you. So, okay, recast my mom as a pizza, but pepperoni is not allowed. And if I don't recast my mom as a pizza that's other than pepperoni, then Disney will buy Warner Brothers. Okay, so let's go with the. I'm gonna go with a pizza with a spicy marinara sauce because my mom's a very warm person, so a warm sauce. And then, we're from Arkansas Razorbacks, so some sort of a pork product would make sense. So let's go with a sausage and bacon pizza with spicy, warm marinara sauce. I don't think I can get more specific than that, Ann Porkins, so we're going to have to go that far. Wells 009 says, are you a RoboCop 2 fan? My 4K Steel just arrived. I think RoboCop 2 is a really interesting movie. It's nowhere near as good as the first one, but it's one of those sequels that just kind of takes the nuttiest things about the first movie and just goes insane with it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a great film, but it's a very interesting watch. Geek Factor says, I noticed you skipped my question. Apologies if it was out of place. Love what you do. You're the golden standard. Simple question. How are you? Thank you. Thank you, Geek Factor. I'm sorry. Did I miss your question? I thought it was going through my whole list here. Let's see. Oh, okay. You're right. I did. I'm sorry. It came right before the Jaws question. So let me ask your original question first. Congratulations for 200K from Poland. Sorry to do this in public, but I have to wonder, is there a way to invite you to come on a podcast/YouTube channel to do an interview, movie talk? Honestly, the best way is probably to send me a message on Instagram. I try to check those regularly. I don't do a whole lot of them just because the channel keeps me very busy. But shoot me over a message like on Instagram, and I will do my best to at least answer. I'm not very good at keeping up with messages, and I apologize for that. But yeah, that's the best way. And also, apologies for skipping a question here. Jan Jablonski says, hi, Dan. Congrats on 200,000. If you were to bet, do you think Tarantino will actually retire as director after his next movie? Shout out to Marek Baranowski, Poland's best working screenwriter. I've thought about this myself a lot, too. Is Tarantino actually going to retire? 5 years ago, I would have said no, not a chance. But he seems to really have taken a step back from a lot of things. I mean, he's still very much in the film scene, but I still don't think he will. I think that he's going to say he retired, but I also think he's so in love with classic film and that sort of Sergio Leone late in your life filmmaking. I think he'll retire for maybe 10 or 15 years and hopefully he sticks around, for the interim. But I could definitely see him wanting to do like a sort of Sam Peckinpah old man type movie when he gets older. So I guess the answer is I think it's more likely that he's going to retire than it was a few years ago. But I also think that even if he does retire, I think he's going to unretire at some point. Doug Developer says, do you feel film school is worth it in 2025? That is a very good question. I think it depends on what you make of it. For me, the value, I didn't go to film school, but I did go to a media production program at Florida State. And we learned how to shoot with mini DV and digital. And this was in the, 2004, 2005 era, which was great timing because everything was moving that way. And the film school people were learning how to work with celluloid and stuff, which is a great skill set to have, but it was becoming less and less common in Hollywood. So, I feel like it was sort of a hybrid film school, and we learned a lot of things that you would now learn in film school. But for me, the value was, number one, practicing what I did, writing for the first time, directing for the first time, managing a crew for the first time, collaborating for the first time. Those were all such important things. The difference between 2004, 2005, and now is that there was really no outlet for you if you were an aspiring filmmaker to make something and have it seen in a public way. Now we have social media, we have YouTube, we have all of these different things that are accessible to people that weren't available back then, and it gives people an opportunity to make things on their own and to find an audience. And so I think that in that way, the value of something like film school has declined because it's no longer sort of a closed shop where you have to go to school and learn all of these skills because that's the only way that you are going to get the doors of Hollywood to open for you. We're in a much different environment now. Having said that, I do think the value still exists to learning from people who have done what you want to do about your craft and hearing from their experience and getting their feedback, getting feedback from people that aren't necessarily people that are already, fans of yours. I get a lot of great feedback from people here on the channel. And I take that feedback to heart. A lot of it's positive, which is great. Some of it is very constructive criticism. Some of it is negative, and I think it applies, and some of it's negative and it doesn't apply. But I think that there is value to somebody with more experience than you have that can say, hey, here's where I think you're going wrong, and here's where I think you're going right. And sometimes they're right about that, and sometimes they're wrong about that. But I think there's value there. And for me, really, the connection is the main thing with film school. There's so many directors. I mean, Barry Jenkins went to Florida State Film School, and I think he still collaborates with people there. Finding so many people that are big creative partners right now met in college or started writing together. I think that there is value to going somewhere with a lot of other people that want to do what you do and finding those connections and maybe finding a creative partner that you're going to work with forever. So the other side of that coin, though, I mean, there's like 5 sides to this coin, is that university education has gotten so heinously, ridiculously expensive, criminally, I think, expensive. So it's hard for me to say, yes, you should potentially put yourself into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in order to go to film school. I think that it's worth it on the creative side. I think that it's worth it on the collaborative side. I think it's worth it educationally if you find a good staff and a good faculty who can actually are invested in teaching you and in helping you learn your craft. The only way that I would say that it's not worth it is because of the expense of going to college right now and education. But if you can find a film school that is maybe more specialized, something where you're maybe not going to get a 4-year degree, but you can learn the craft and the trade, and I think that they're out there, and something that is financially within your means, fiscally responsible, I do think it's worth it. Otherwise, I would say still practice, write, direct, make stuff, even if nobody's going to watch it, and find other people that want to do what you do. It's easier than ever to do that because you can also get a great education that way. It's a very long, convoluted answer to that question, but I think it's a complicated question as well. Tough Luck says, what did you think of Pixar's Hoppers teaser trailer? I didn't see it. I saw it came out, but I didn't see it. It's funny, on my show about talking about movies, I was so worried about prepping for the movie show that I didn't see some of these teasers and stuff that came out. We're going to talk about the Stranger Things teaser, though, which I did see. Ronnie says, what's the furthest you've ever driven for an early screening and cursed the movie on your drive back home because it was a bust? I can say unequivocally that it was when I drove to Dallas, which was about 5.5 hours without traffic, 6.5 hours with traffic to see Kraven the Hunter, and had to drive back after having driven that far to see Kraven the Hunter. Even though the review did well on the channel, I remember driving back saying, I don't, what am I doing? What is this? What is my life? What am I doing with my life? Kraven the Hunter was the one that just made me go, why did I do this? Even if it's, I generally tend to err on the side of whatever's good for the channel, I'll do it. But that was one where I'm like, I don't know about this one. Jay Barrett Mash. Hey, Dan, the deep purple needle drop in the Stranger Things trailer was sick. On that note, do you have some favorite uses of music in films? Well, we were just talking about Quentin Tarantino. He does great at needle drops in his movies. Martin Scorsese is one of the all-time greats. Generally, if you can use a pop song effectively, we were just talking about Stranger Things. The Kate Bush needle drop in that last season was fantastic. So it's hard for me to think of a bunch of specific ones at the moment, but there's several that I thought. Curtis, thank you so much. Just a super chat. Thank you so much, Curtis. Christopher Jose, and then we'll jump to a couple more stories, and then I'll get to the rest of your comments. Christopher says, hey, Dan, do you believe Dune as a film series will ever overtake Star Wars? Big fan of Star Wars, but the Dune films are so well made. Also, congrats. It depends on what you mean by overtake. Box office wise, no, it'll never overtake Star Wars. Star Wars just has too much of a head start, and Dune, I think, is just doesn't have that same hugely broad mainstream appeal. Creatively, sure. I mean, if Denis Villeneuve can turn out a third, in my opinion, great Dune movie, and we have a trilogy of 3 great Dune films, then I think that you can start looking at that trilogy versus, say, the original Star Wars trilogy and saying, okay, well, movie for movie, which one of these was more successful and for what reasons? And then for a lot of people that didn't grow up on the Star Wars trilogy, and they're starting to outnumber those of us who did, the people that are watching Dune now as maybe teenagers and young adults that then grow up having those movies kind of have been the Star Wars of their youth, then yeah, I could see people saying, I think that the Dune movies are better than Star Wars. But you sort of have to let those things happen. I mean, it's very organic. I remember the turn from, oh, the Star Wars prequels are garbage to, oh, the Star Wars prequels are great, because the kids that grew up with those movies then grew up themselves and had a wholly different outlook on those films than the ones of us who saw them when we were, in our late teens or in college. So yes, box office, no, creatively, yes. I'll get to the rest of your questions, but I just wanted to cover a couple other news stories. First of all, we were talking about some of the teaser trailers that came out. We got our first real look at Stranger Things Season 5 or Stranger Things 5. There was a little bit of a tease during Netflix's event, but the Stranger Things trailer, really the first good look that we've gotten at the 5th season, came out today. I think that it was actually a pretty good teaser. It was actually that. It was a teaser. We saw imagery. We saw some of what the season might be about. We caught glimpses of characters, but it didn't really go into the plot. It teased some stuff and returns to some characters. But I think that it succeeded in the sense that it showed you everybody that's going to be in the series, which, people are excited about that. Hey, look, all these cast members are coming back. Here's a glimpse at, following up on Max's storyline. Here's a glimpse at what might be happening with Vecna. Some glimpses of different characters in trouble. I believe there's a quick shot of Linda Hamilton in there, which I'm super excited about because that's just a great marriage of 80s icon to show that's obsessed with 80s iconography. But I think that they did a really good job of teasing the new season of Stranger Things without being like, here's what's happening, here's what happened with this character, here's what villains are coming back and when they're coming back and how they're coming back, and we're even going to hint at the fate of a character or two. It really was just like, here's a little taste of this final season. So I think they did the marketing very well. It's well-trodden ground. People have talked about it so much before, but I mean, my goodness, this cast looks so adult now. And I get that there's a lot of things that they couldn't help because, time passes. They had a pandemic and a prolonged work stoppage in the middle of their production cycle, so we couldn't even get seasons as quick as we were getting them, which wasn't particularly fast. But if not creatively, then chronologically, it is the right time to end this series. But I think that it was a good first look. I think it did what you want a teaser trailer for a new season of a TV show to do, which is to say, hey, look, here's an idea of what the show is. Get intrigued, get excited, and then we'll move on from there. I also wanted to talk about something else on Netflix. This was a really fun story, and it kind of spoils the streaming charts portion of next week's show. But I was putting together all the numbers from Netflix yesterday because I'm a dork, and what I do when I'm not on the air is do things like crunch streaming numbers. And I believe, third week of the movie K-Pop Demon Hunters took over the number one spot across all of Netflix for the last week that they have data for. It started off like lower on the top 10, then I think it was number 2. And in the second week, it was number 1. It was, I think, barely off the week 2 numbers, which were a huge improvement on the week 1 numbers. And this was a movie that I put on my top 10, my best of the year so far, because I really enjoyed it. And this is one of the things that I love about the streaming model and how you can kind of analyze human behavior, because Netflix can try to manufacture a movie and tell you that it's like the biggest movie ever. It has all these stars in it. You should get super excited about it. And then it's a movie like The Electric State, which has, maybe a big opening week and then falls off the, falls off the cliff. Or even a movie like The Old Guard 2, which is like, hey, here's a big sequel to a streaming hit that we had a few years ago, and this is one of our biggest movies of the year. And K-Pop Demon Hunters easily drew in more views over the same week than the first full week of The Old Guard 2. This is what I think the streaming model should be encouraging, which is, we saw it with Adolescence. Stranger Things was like this. Squid Game was like this. The idea of, hey, we're going to make something that's maybe a little bit what other people, like a studio, I know that Sony made K-Pop Demon Hunters, but I don't think that they would throw it out into wide release in theaters, because they might say, oh, well, this is too niche. We're not sure if an audience is going to like that. Squid Game, too weird, too violent. Stranger Things, too 80s. Wednesday, I think, was even like this, where it's like, oh, Addams Family spinoff, and nobody really expected it to blow up the way that it did. I love movies like K-Pop Demon Hunters and shows like Squid Game, where there's no manufacturing to how many views it gets or how popular it is or how many people watch it. I mean, Adolescence was dropped with little to no fanfare, and it just built organic word of mouth. And I think that's what we're seeing with K-Pop Demon Hunters. It's a movie that it came out the first week. Maybe the core fan base for that movie saw it, but then people started talking about it. That's how I ended up watching it. It came out, I didn't really pay it any attention, and then I started seeing these comments popping up saying like, Dan, if you watch K-Pop Demon Hunters, it's really good. And it wasn't just one comment, it was several. So then I think it's second week that it was out, I watched it and I really liked it. It was in time to make my top 10 movies of the year so far show. So I talked about it on my show in that second week, and maybe other people were doing similar things. So then a lot more people would watch it in its second week. And then those people tell other people, and those numbers sustain in its third week. That's what I like about the streaming model, when you can throw stuff out there that maybe is considered too risky for the mainstream or too niche, but it can find that audience. You don't necessarily get that opportunity now in a theater. In a theater now, it's like 1-2 weeks. If you don't connect with people, you're gone, and people are going to have to find you elsewhere. Streaming, it just lives there. And so K-Pop Demon Hunters is to me sort of similar to a movie like The Greatest Showman that I talked about on charts or charting back when I was at Screen Junkies, where it's not necessarily the biggest thing out of the gate, but it's something that people find organically. And so I wanted to point that out today, because I thought that was really fun when I got those numbers and I did the little sort on my spreadsheet, because again, I'm a massive dork and a massive nerd when it comes to this stuff. I thought that was really cool and really fun, and I want to talk about it here on the show. So yeah, K-Pop Demon Hunters, the number one program, show, or movie on Netflix worldwide for the past week, and we'll see where it goes from there. One more story I wanted to talk about before I get to the rest of your questions, and then after that we'll wrap the show up. I did a video yesterday about the Emmy nominations and covered everything, and one of the things that I went really probably into the most detail about was Andor and the fact that nobody in the main cast received a nomination for acting at the Emmy Awards yesterday. The only people that were recognized were Alan Tudyk, who was nominated for Best Voiceover Performance for K2, and Forrest Whitaker for Guest Performance in a Drama Series for playing Saw Gerrera. Nobody else in the cast was nominated for any other award, and I'm still upset about that because there were so many other shows that had multiple nominees. And I mean, White Lotus had so many acting nominations, and I didn't really even get what the big deal about that season was. I heard so much about it, and I went back and watched it, and I was just like, okay, well, I think you could probably told that in about 4 or 5 episodes, and it was like 8 episodes long, and there's a lot of ponderous shots of the sun beating through the trees. I just didn't really see what the big deal was, but the Emmys, I think, over-nominated that show. Severance is a fantastic show, but so many people got nominated and nobody from Andor. I just think that the voters, and I'm one of them, I didn't get to vote on any of the category or the performance categories for nominations, but I think they just over-nominated so many shows and left out shows like Andor. Well, Tony Gilroy, I think, had a really good perspective on that. He gave an interview about it, and he said, there are a lot of performances that I wish were recognized. Diego Luna and Genevieve O'Reilly, there are a dozen performances. These aren't great moment-to-moment performances. These are epic, long-term character studies that they've done over 24 episodes. I think the ultimate victory is that these performances will be celebrated and discussed for years to come. I feel confident about that. And I think that this is, when people talk about leadership, I think this is great leadership from Tony Gilroy because it feels like he's got perspective on this. It would have been very easy for him to go to the press and to trash the Academy, as I did, and as many other people did, and say, they're so stupid, they didn't nominate anybody in my cast. I can't believe they did that. But instead, he, and maybe this was somewhat political, or maybe he actually does have perspective on this. I think he's got the right idea with it. As somebody who's creatively involved in the show and who wrote a lot of the words that these characters said, which was like, I'm disappointed that they weren't nominated. They're great performances. But the real victory is the fact that they will live on and that they will endure and that people will still be talking about these performances in 5 or 10 years. And that's the truth. I mean, the Academy Awards have showed us this over and over and over again. A movie's not nominated and everybody says, what a terrible miscarriage of justice that this movie wasn't nominated for an Oscar. But then 10 years later, that's the movie that people are still talking about. That's the classic. That's the one that, and really then, what would you want more as a creative? Would you want an Oscar, or would you want to make a movie that people are still talking about in 25 years? And I think that 9 out of 10 creatives would probably say, I would pick making the movie that people are still talking about in 25 years. And so I read that quote yesterday, and I said, that's the right attitude. I think Tony Gilroy had the right attitude on that. And yeah, he's got perspective. He's got perspective on that. And I don't know. I respect that. I appreciate that quote, and I respect that. So let's wrap the show up with the last of your questions. So if you have any super chats that you wanted to send them in now, and then we'll wrap things up. Eric says, congrats, Dan. You've been my #1 go-to since Screen Junkies. You've never failed me. Do you like Giallo? Do you have a favorite? Should it make a return in some form? Could it? Much love, sir. I might have to look to the other comments, and see. I've got to be honest. I don't know what Giallo is. Giallo. Is that like, somebody's going to clip this out and say, look how out of touch Dan is, because I hate to say that I'm not sure what you're asking me about. Can it make a comeback? I don't know. I'm so old. I'm so old that I think I might have missed that. Unless you're talking about Giallo. I like Giallo. Giallo's good, but I don't know what Giallo is. I'm so sorry. Giallo, Italian for yellow, is a genre of Italian. Thank you, Mike Monahan. Giallo, Italian for yellow, is a genre of Italian thriller horror films characterized by mystery, suspense, and stylized violence. It often incorporates elements of slasher, psychological thriller, and sexploitation.
The term originates from the yellow covers of Italian pulp mystery novels that inspired the film genre. Well, first of all, Mike Monahan, thank you. That is very helpful. I'm sure that there are many film fans that are going to say that I am not a true cinephile because I did not know what that was on its surface. And I know exactly, now that it's been described to me, I know exactly the kind of movie that you are describing because I've seen the original Suspiria. I'm guessing it's sort of like those Argento-esque horror films. I don't have a favorite necessarily because I haven't seen a whole lot of them. Could it make a return in some form? Sure. I mean, I think that we've seen a lot of horror directors that have definitely paid homage to that. I would say something like the Terrifier series is kind of the modern version, maybe the modern US version of that. But everything comes and goes in trends. So I do think that we could see a return to it. It is somewhat niche, but there have been niche things that have been able to make it into the mainstream. So yes, I think that it could make a return in some form. I think that it has in some ways. And everything old is new again, especially in the horror genre. So I could see a filmmaker kind of taking the genre that direction. And thank you to Mike Monahan for helping to educate me there. Jordan Collins 444 says, "Love you, Dan. You inspired me to start a movie podcast with my friends called Guilty or Great. I consider myself the Dan of the group. Knowing how I'm perceived and knowing how other people perceive me, I'm guessing you are often on the guilty side." But I like that, I like comparing those two things. Not good or bad, guilty or great. Because even if something goes into guilty, you're not saying it's bad. You're just saying, it's guilty. Guilty pleasure, guilty of maybe some things, but not other things. But yeah. So embrace being the Dan of the group. When I first started on Movie Fights, it was a bad thing for me to be the Dan of the group. Not a lot of people liked my vibe, but I won people over eventually. Stick to your guns. Be the Dan. Be the Dan of your group. Echo Chamberlain says, "Hey Dan, as a Spielberg fan, do you agree that Empire of the Sun is crazily overlooked? And did it affect you when you saw it?" I do think it's crazily overlooked. I don't think that it's one of his absolute best films, like many people do. I think that a lot of times when a movie's overlooked, the revisionist tendency sometimes is to maybe overpraise it or overrate it a little bit. But I will say that the growing up, Empire of the Sun had this reputation of like, oh, Spielberg made all of these great movies, Oscar-nominated movies, big box office movies, and in the middle of it, he just made this dud called Empire of the Sun. And so I actually didn't watch it for many years because that was kind of the vibe. And this was, many years ago. And then when I finally saw it, I'm like, actually, this movie's pretty good. I mean, the filmmaking in that movie, the way he shoots some of those aerial sequences and the planes flying in, the scope that he gives it. I mean, he didn't forget how to make movies when he made Empire of the Sun. So I do think that it is overlooked in the sense that it had a reputation for so long as being a bad movie or a bad Spielberg movie. I don't think it is. I don't think it's one of his best movies, but if you're a Spielberg fan and you haven't seen Empire of the Sun, you should see it just for the filmmaking alone, because he does some real, like almost David Lean style epic filmmaking in that movie. There's a scene where there's planes coming over the camp and Christian Bale's on the rooftop and you get this full vista. It's incredible. So I do think it's overlooked, but not one of his best. John Floro says, "Longtime fan, congrats on 200,000. Your summer box office prediction list is so fun. Curious if you would consider a weekly segment where you regularly guess box office, opening weekends, final totals, etc." I don't think so, because I feel like I have a general sense for how a movie is going to do, in that I think this might do really well, or I don't think it's going to do very well. And maybe it'll be about here, but I don't really have, and I'm not really plugged into the resources for me to spend so many hours a week looking at all the different tracking estimates and all the different metrics and saying, okay, well, based on these 10 different things, which is how I would do it, because that's how I do everything, I can say with confidence that I believe that this movie is going to open to X amount of money. Because if I say it's going to open to $135 million, it opens to 115, or it opens to 165, then the conversation doesn't become about how the movie did. It becomes about like, well, you were 20 off, or you were $30 million off, or it's the same reason why I don't particularly enjoy giving numerical ratings for movies. I do it because that's how Rotten Tomatoes is able to do an average critic score. But even then, I'll go back and say, well, that number should be higher. That number should be lower. I think the more specific you get about numbers, the more the conversation becomes granular about the numbers. And for me, charts and box office is more about tracking the overall trend of a movie. I mean, we'll go into records and how a movie does on opening weekend, but then we're going to keep tracking it. So I think that almost is too hyper specific for me to say, here's what's opening this weekend and here's the exact dollar amount where I think that it's going to be, opening, because then I think people are going to view the show as like a percentage accuracy meter. And I want the show to be more about a conversation about the overall economics of it. Harbs K says, any Blu-ray pickups for this month's Criterion 50% off sale? I got Anora, Barry Lyndon, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and Sorcerer all on 4K. I know that Barnes & Noble was doing a 50% off sale all month, and I think that Amazon was matching it a little bit. I did not. I've got some travel coming up later this year, kind of all hyper-focused in the fall. So I've been saving up money for that just because, I want to make sure that I'm in a good space. You never know with YouTube. I know what I made this month. I don't know what I'm going to make next month. So I kind of forewent this phase of 50% off sales. I'll probably pick up some stuff on the next Criterion Flash sale. Barry Lyndon I have not on 4K. Godzilla, all the new Godzilla movies they reissued. I'm kind of waiting to see if they do a full set of all of them, because I have the early edition, all the earlier films. I'm waiting to see if they put all of the later ones out in a package. That is one of my favorite of the sort of middle era of Godzilla movies. Anora, I've been wanting to get. Sorcerer, I just need to see Sorcerer. I've heard it's great. I haven't actually seen it. And I think this will be the last question, unless we have a couple come in before I wrap up. It's from Christopher, who says, back to your point, do you think Blade Runner 2099 will fall by the wayside as a show like Andor or a film like Dune? It seems like awards should be given to more sci-fi projects. I mean, we'll have to see if that show is good. I've heard a little bit about it and the plans for it. But, there was a Dune show, Dune Prophecy, that got next to no Emmy nominations, but it also was a show that didn't really make much of an impact. I know that it has its fans among the people that watched it, but it didn't break out like a lot of other shows did. So I think that just because a show is maybe associated with a property that's done well in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to break out and be as successful or as recognized or as acclaimed as what came before. I do think that there is a genre bias against things like sci-fi and horror, most particularly at the Academy Awards. Sometimes there are movies that break through, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. But also I think with the Emmys, and I think we saw that with Andor, the prestige, quote unquote, dramas got a lot of the heat. I mean, Severance is kind of a sci-fi show, but the human drama is sort of what is underneath all of it. And I think that a lot of people said, oh, that's just a Star Wars show. And, the acting couldn't be that great. So I do agree that awards do sometimes discriminate against some of these genres. But at the same time, I think you do have to wait till the show comes out. We have to see what Blade Runner 2099 is going to be. And, as a show or a movie. I forget if it's going to be a show or a movie, but just generally as a project, even a sequel to a movie sometimes isn't as good or acclaimed as the one before it. So yeah, I think number one, we have to see how it's going to turn out. Is it any good? And then we can have that discussion about what was it acclaimed enough? Did it get enough recognition, etc. So I think that's everything everybody's got for me. We're going to wrap it up today. Way fewer technical issues than we had last week. Like I said, I did a little bit of maintenance on my setup. I did a little bit more testing. I'm running devices through different things here so that I'm not quite as reliant on, I think there was one of the ports on my computer was bad last week. I think that was part of the reason why we had some trouble streamlining everything. And I can say from my end that this show went way smoother than last week. This is kind of the template for what this show is going to be. I'm going to have people that I bring on from time to time. It's not just going to be me all the time. I'm going to try to have guests on. And I'm curious to know, I don't know if necessarily you'll be able to leave it in the chat, but leave it in the comments below as far as the timing for the show. I'm going live at 4 o'clock Central Daylight Time, which is going to change when we go off daylight time for people that aren't on daylight time. But what do you think of the timing of this show? And also the day. I'm going to try to aim for Wednesdays, but having said that, I believe next week I might have to do the show a day later because I'm going to be on the road again for Fantastic Four. I think that's one that's probably going to be worth me going on the road, although I'm not going to be able to hit the embargo, which is disappointing because it's always helpful to the channel when I can have my review out when the review embargo is lifted, but they're not even having the regional screenings until the day after the review embargo lifts. So I won't, unfortunately, have a review for Fantastic Four right when the embargo lifts, but I will have one I'm aiming for next Thursday morning, unless something changes. So it'll be a little bit later, but look out for that next week. That is going to push the live show off of Wednesday, unless I, for some reason, decide not to go or something falls through with the screening. But generally, I want to know what you think about the timing, what you think about the day, focusing largely on Wednesday, because I want to make sure that everybody has the best chance to watch the show. I'm not going to be able to get it at a time when everybody can watch it, but I want to give the most people the best chance to watch it. So yeah, leave that comment or that feedback for me down below. Thank you so much for watching today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for getting me to 200,000 subscribers. Thank you to Real Rejects for chipping in and saying hi and showing a little bit of love from the YouTube community. And most importantly, as I always say, thank you for watching this video. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you know when I'm going live again. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.